Why do we groove? Why does it feel so good when you move to the music and just when you hit that right beat on the right spot? Sometimes, funny enough, even when you just create that little drag, it still feels very nice too. Just like what Jay Dilla did to his songs, right? While I was figuring out the answers to these questions, I actually bumped into the paper, and this paper might just be able to explain some of the questions you might have too with musical groove. Welcome to Everything But Dance. Yeah, things we do for a catchy intro, man. So, we are a group of dancers that are super passionate about what we're doing with dance, and we would love to give back to the community by sharing our unique perspectives and this artistry. So that means in this channel, you're not gonna see battle videos, concepts, performance, choreography. But instead, you'll hear us talk a lot about the culture, the business, the psychology, the science behind all of these artistry and creative activities that we actually found out to be inextricably related. Just before we go into the episode 1, I'd like to thank you so much for believing in us. Thank you for believing in dance. And most importantly, thank you for believing in yourself. So the paper is titled A Review of Psychological and Neuroscientific Research on Musical Groove. It is created by researchers in Japan, Australia, and Denmark. And what they did was essentially looking through all the neuroscience and psychology papers, research being done from 2006 all the way to 2023. Essentially tried to unravel the inner urge we have to move to music. We're not gonna go into the whole 25 pages long research papers, reports, numbers, data. Instead, we've digested that for you, and in the next 15 minutes or so, we'll try to share with you the key findings, and we hope that by sharing with you this knowledge, you will be able to have a different perspective to your relationship with music and dance. So before we go into the nitty-gritty of what is groove, let's set some definitions. In this paper, they call groove as some sort of spontaneous movement that your body would create in response to music. And you can characterize that by rhythmic patterns and synchronization with the beat. But if you ask someone else, like a jazz musician, right, they might approach it more from a music perspective, describing it as more of an aspect that induces the pleasant urge to move along with the rhythms while performing. In my opinion, right, nowadays, people describe groove as more of a feelings. It's a sensation that not everyone will feel the same way. But as dancers, groove is everything. It's what connects our dance. It's the indent between the moves. It's that current that keeps the water flowing. Groove is an invisible thread that weaves through our movements. It unites each step into a seamless tapestry of artistry. Groove is the breath that brings our dance to life. You inhale the rhythm, exhale the expression. So now we know the definitions of grooves. Let's go into a little bit about how our brain works when we groove. So when we are grooving, our brain actually releases the feel-good chemicals that you might have heard of, called dopamine and endorphins, and that creates a sense of pleasure and euphoria for you. And this neurological response that we have, right, reinforces our desire to dance and encourages us to keep moving. So research actually has shown that there's this particular area of our brain called basal ganglia and cerebellum that are involved in coordinating movement and timing. And when we groove, these regions will work together to synchronize our movements to the beat of the songs. And interestingly, when we perceive that rhythm in the beats, the activity in our brain regions that involve movement also increase even when we are not moving at all. So what this goes to show is that there is a correlation between how we perceive the beats and how we move our body. And there are research that says that when our brains are damaged,
emotional damage,
the part of it that's damaged, that involved movement, will prevent you from understanding rhythm and prevent you from feeling beats.
What?
So it's super interesting. We're not only wired to move and perceive beats. The way we perceive it is actually inextricably related to how we will move to it. So the feeling of groove can be explained by more than just sensation. It's a biological structure in our brain that connects our rhythmic perceptions with the body movement. So now you've got an understanding of what is happening biologically to our body when we listen to music and when we move to it. Let's move on to the second part, where I want to mention this concept that would explain a lot of other things that we would feel. So this concept is called predictive coding, and it's a theory that suggests our pleasure in grooving comes from minimizing prediction error. So essentially, our brain is trying to predict the beat, and we move in sync with it, we feel rewarded. Boom, mind-blowing.
What?
The paper essentially says that in the context of this perceiving rhythms, we have two different phases that's going on. First of all, we'll have the beat finding stage, and then we have the beat continuation stage. We first extract the beat of the rhythm, and then we have the beat continuation stage, where we keep perceiving that beat over time. What happened is when we're trying to find the beats, which is the first stage of the two, we link that to predictive coding with low certainty, so we don't know what exactly is coming. And as we try to figure that out and get a better understanding, better grasp of the beat patterns, our brain starts to move from making prediction with lower confidence to higher confidence. And beat continuation is when we start making confident predictions. This guy, which I'm going to butcher the name for sure, Toivonen, and other researchers connected these stages to the concept of active inferences. And active inferences is essentially a theory that says our brain predicts and responds to the world by trying to minimize the surprise with the prediction error. In the rhythmic context, we now understand why we would dance and move to the music in such a way that almost felt like we're trying to predict it all the time. And the reason why that we just might want to predict beats and it feels so good when you get it right is just because our brains are wired this way. So I hope that by now you kind of get an understanding of how we think and how we want to approach the way we move. We use a lot of scientific papers, scientific evidences, and link that to how our brain works to explain many findings and many feelings that we have. And this understanding, we hope, is something that can open up avenues for interdisciplinary research between psychology, neuroscience, musicology, ethnomusicology, etc. And it shed lights on the diverse facets of grooves. So while we experience grooves and it can be explained by activities in our brain, this experience, I have to admit, is highly subjective.
Derivative? It's symbiotic. No?
Everyone interprets it differently, everyone expresses it differently. So I guess a good analogy we can make here from the paper is your experiences to practicing listening music differs by your musical sophistication, and your musical sophistication can change how your brain perceives the music. Same as your sensitivity to it. There's even a proper scoring done by the Goldsmith University in UK that scores the musical training and perceptual abilities. It's called Goldsmith Music Sophistication Index. For musicians, right, when they listen to music and practice listening to that music many times, what you see is a strength in their synaptic connectivity and sensitivity to rhythmic complexities. A study has also shown that if you look at the brain activity as a musician comparing to a non-musician when they're experiencing groove, the way that the brain reacts is quite different. Specifically, one is more sensitive to the changes because of the neural connectivity they've built to this specific groove experiences and this specific music. This can apply to many other things too, not just the complexity of the rhythm, but also like how familiar you become and what eventually forms your preferences. There are also like cultural differences where, for example, music with micro-timing might actually elicit stronger groove experiences compared to music without micro-timing and once in some other culture. You know what I'm talking about now, right? Right, so we've looked into the differences we might have in how we experience groove. And these differences can come from cultural because of how micro-timing might influence one culture's musical experiences more than others. So what exactly is in the music that makes us feel that way, right? The study has actually looked into that. And they found that there was a massive positive correlation between your groove experiences when the rhythm is played naturally by humans comparing to mechanically by computers. And the differences between these two are actually that the humans' rhythms contain micro-timing. And this micro-timing is obviously the idea that like you just go off the beat by a tiny little bit. It doesn't influence the experiences overall, but that micro-timing might trigger something we call neuroentertainment, which in turn trigger a stronger groove experiences. What is neuroentertainment? Well, in plain words, right? What it means essentially is rhythms with micro-timing might attract more attention to the humans wanted to strengthen experiences. Other similar musical features, right, that would create these experiences could have syncopation. What that means is rhythms with moderate syncopation can trigger a sense of that sweet anticipation, and that sweet anticipation strikes that balance between expectation and novelty. So now this kind of explains why, right, like the crowds go crazy when there's a sudden drop.
I watched that.
Or unexpected factors in beats, or when Jay Dilla deliberately delayed the drum beat just by
semi-count.
and it created such a revolutionary groovy experiences. We've explained everything that we thought was interesting in the paper. What does all of this got to do with you? And what does knowing all of this get to help you as a dancer and general artist? Well, we believe that the knowledge provides us a framework to think about how our brain is wired, how it helps us perceive music, how it explains how our mind is connected to our body, and how this can differ across individuals. We think that by realizing our feelings of groove can be studied and explained, not just felt, we can then integrate this new perspective into looking at everything around us. So that is the stylistic difference we might have between artists. How can one dancer stay in the pocket for longer than others? And more generally, why does one dancer have more musicality? Another way that you can kind of progress this thinking is once you can compartmentalize the topics, right, we can then tackle our problems that we might have in the practices through the mechanisms that we've learned about how our brain works today. For example, we know we have neuroentertainment, we know how we have predictive coding, and how do you use that to improve your way to groove, your way to beat perceptions, your way to move to them. That is all something that we can definitely start mentioning more, but we have laid down the foundations, and you can then start to see how we might be able to approach the topic, right? Thank you so much for watching. We hope that we've covered enough for you to digest. In the future sessions, we'll definitely touch more on the ideas of neuroentertainment, we'll touch more on the ideas of reinforced learning, dopamine reward system, etc. This is just a work in progress. It's starting with a passion project, but now we've decided to take it a lot more serious about it. Thank you for supporting us. Thank you for believing in dance. And thank you for believing in yourself. Have a good one.